Welcome back. This is the fourth journey of the truth, the absolute truth, so help me God. In the last one, I got to where my daughter had turned around and said to me, the gateway's been opened and the king is coming. So I'm going to go straight after that, what happened. My daughter then took me into the kitchen where she got an empty jar, drew a picture of me and her, adding a dog, although at that time we didn't have a dog. My daughter take the picture to the jar, then she ripped up a tea bag, placing the leaves into it, filled it with water, put the lid on, taped the lid, shook it up, saying she would save me. It was the early morning and still dark at that time. My daughter's father had bought me previously a musical wizard with a dragon in a sphere of water with the Harry Potter theme tune, although it had been knocked off the shelf and smashed sometime before. The cat jumped up on the shelf and smashed it. I kept it because there was nothing wrong with the wizard or the dragon. Well, something strange happened that night. The wizard's eyes began to glow red, and my instinct was to place it in a bath of water because it had previously been in a water globe. My reality was changing, and I found it hard keeping it together. I had to for my daughter's sake. She only had me. Although her father visited, he wasn't apt to bringing up a child and far too selfish at that time. In the morning, I tried to behave as normal as possible, preparing breakfast, washing and dressing my child, getting her ready for her father who was due to pick her up to take her out for the day. When he turned up, his look was stern and his manner abrupt, so much so my daughter hid behind the door, clearly scared. I wouldn't permit my child to be in his company, and so I sent him away. Soon after, I got in the car, and by this time my arms were feeling strange. I had heat rippling throughout them. My stomach was in knots, and a strange, smouldering fear inside my entire core. I went to my mum's not knowing what to do, and that didn't help, so I got in the car and I went to my sister's house. She wasn't at home. As I approached the junction, I observed a male with a unicorn tattoo on his neck. Suddenly, and without warning, I began to read code. Everything around me was code, signs, symbols. I was losing a grip on my reality. Although I managed to make it my way back home to the tiny one-bedroom flat with my daughter. At this time, I was still struggling to keep a grip on reality. When inside, the phone rang and it was my friend's husband asking why I wouldn't let my child go with her father. I explained. Then he invited me to take the girls to a wacky warehouse in Altrincham somewhere to meet with my friend, Claire. So I drove to Lynn, parked my car up, and we travelled in his car to the wacky warehouse. Although, as I'm sat in front, I'm still trying very hard to keep a grip on reality. Strange energies and shifting, soaring throughout my core. I looked at him and asked if I was going to my death. He didn't reply. He just kept silent and smiled at me. As we walked into the play centre with the girls, my friend was already there waiting. We approached the smiling attendant behind the counter to pay. She handed me a form asking me to fill it in. It was almost like filling in a passport form. Name, date of birth. It was pages long. I thought it strange as I hadn't ever had to do that before when going into a child's play centre. However, I was still trying to keep a grip on reality. As we approached, my friend sat at the table. I began to notice something. I was seeing what I thought were aliens. All of a sudden, I felt like I was in an alien airport. I know it sounds like Men in Black type of stuff, although that was my perception at the time. The girls ran off into the large play area, and I explained to my friend what had transpired the night before. When we got back to my friend's house, the symptoms were all engulfing. She placed her hand on my head, saying she could see swirling red energy. You see, when we were younger, we had a seance in her living room. There was only three of us, Jason, Claire and myself. It was Jason's suggestion, and being open-minded, we said, why not? So we put Holster planets on and we just sat there on the chairs. Well, he sat on the couch, we sat on chairs. Suddenly, as I'm looking at Jason, he was engulfed in a strange mist. And inside the mist, sitting inside of him, was a huge horned buffalo looking creature with red eyes. I freaked out and told Claire what I was seeing. She could also see exactly the same. Claire switched the light on. He told us not to worry, that it was just his spiritual self who fought evil. So we switched the light off. And as we sat on the chair, suddenly I had a falling sensation as if I was in a lift going down at great speed. I told them, and he said to go with it, not to worry or panic. So I just went with it. Amazingly, I came out in an archway of beautiful coloured flowers. And as I'm walking through the archway, two Indian males dressed in white clothes stood at either side, bowing their heads as I passed to enter into a beautiful marbled room where a gown stood. The gown was completely made of gold fish scales with a tall headdress that looked Egyptian, although reaching up into a point and kind of draping over the shoulders and down the back. Assistants helped me to get into the gown. Then suddenly, zap, I'm back in the chair, looking around the room as light beams began to beam in. I remember seeing four in total and watched with interest as they interacted with one another. Then they beamed up. It was literally like beam me up Scotty. Both of us were spiritually interested in all manner of things. I texted my friend earlier asking if she remembered, and she does. We've only just reconnected after 19 years, and a lot of things have got in the way of our friendship. Anyway, as I sat in the chair with Claire touching my forehead, she got up saying she had something that would help, going upstairs and coming down with a box in her hand, a present from her younger sister. She took the prayer scroll out and began to read it aloud, and within seconds I was retching. I had to run upstairs to the bathroom with Claire behind, still reading the prayer. I vomited into the toilet, and when I looked into the mirror, my eyes had begun to turn yellow. Not the white of the eye, the actual eye, and the burning in my arms became more intense. Claire said I needed to cleanse myself and I should take the box with the items home with me. Inside the box was a small Buddha, a bell, prayer, beads, the scroll, and the scroll mantras, along with a picture of the deity with four arms. I think it's the Bhagavad Gita. I have great gratitude towards Claire for giving me the tools to cleanse and allowing me to carry on being mother to my child. I thank you. Anyway, that night, after putting my daughter to bed, I went into the living room. I lit the candle, sat down on the floor, making sure I had the bucket there just in case I was sick again. I didn't really know what the heck I was doing. However, I rang the bell, lit the candle, and didn't know what to expect. Although it was worth trying, as the effects were intensifying and I was struggling to keep a grip on reality. I began to recite the mantra, repeating it over and over as I held the beads. The next minute, I throw up into the bucket and my head and arms begin to shake rapidly. Then zap, I'm out there like an eye in the sky, zooming into a Tibetan temple where I observed a monk on the floor, deep in trance, reciting mantras while frantically rocking to and fro. Then from there, I was taken at intense speed to another temple, only this was in China. I observed an old, ancient Chinese man wearing a pale blue gown with wizard sleeves. He had the longest beard I had ever seen, and it reached the floor. I observed as he shuffled to look at something. Then zap, I was back in my body and thrown backwards to the floor, and from my chakra came a shadow which flew off into the distance. Excuse me, the pages are stuck together. Sorry about this. This is not a fanciful tale. It is the absolute truth. I am aware some of you may think it impossible. However, it is the absolute truth. That's all for now. I will do my 5th tomorrow. Love and peace to you all.